So I'm just warming up. Tell you guys gather so we can start. So, what's up guys? For today's video, I'm gonna be talking about the human figure. So, to start drawing a human figure, you have to have at least some knowledge, or the least knowledge. There are some people that don't have any knowledge at all, like zero knowledge, and that's actually not so bad. So consider this video as the start point, okay? So, but when I'm saying the least knowledge, I'm talking about anatomy and human figures. I'm not talking about drawing itself. I'm not talking about drawing the basic shapes. You have to actually know the basics first, like edges, shapes, and so on. Also perspective, and perspective is so important in this topic. So you really have to have at least some knowledge about basics. So to get started, I just recommend you to do some warming ups, because warming ups actually benefits a lot while drawing. It make you so loose with lines and effective. So let's start. First of all, if you have like the zero knowledge I'm talking about, so you have to make the human drawing in stages. So as beginner, when I started drawing, the first thing I did was actually approaching the human figure like I was approaching any other thing when I was a kid, and that is by drawing the contour lines, just following the contour lines to make a human figure. And since you're a beginner, actually it's a big mistake. Pros do that a lot, and it's actually called like blocking out the shape. They block out the shape, but they have the sense of proportions, the sense of everything. So please don't start with contour lines. It will waste your time, and you have zero knowledge about proportions, about the structure, so that will not benefit you in any way. So to start, I'm gonna recommend, I know sometimes having like some books to start with, reading and even viewing some videos about anatomy, it kinda sometimes overwhelming. So, but I recommend you the Michael Hampton human drawing. It is actually a very, very good book to start with, and it's so easy. Okay, so first of all, there is something called gesture. And what is gesture? It actually appears in lots of stages while drawing. So it is the start point, and also you have to keep some of this gesture while drawing, because it actually benefits your human figure to make it kinda dynamic. So you won't lose that life on that human drawing. You wanna go away from having a stiff human figure. So Michael Hampton says that gesture in this stage, which is the first stage, is about storytelling and composition. He's not talking about proportions, he's not talking about anything else, he's only talking about storytelling and composition. It is actually about communicating with the viewer, what you want to convey the viewer, how you want to communicate with the viewer. Okay, so in that stage we only concentrating on communicating an idea to a viewer or audience. Okay, so in this stage you have to actually erase everything, just concentrate on the qualities, the big masses. That's it. So sometimes people start with a gesture and they don't even know how to start. So I've seen lots of videos in books also. They are talking about gesture as if it's like an easy thing to do. So I'm gonna tell you how to start with a very easy start point and very easy approach, so it can be like the milestone, like the starting point. From here you can actually start having like a good base to start and know what is a human figure is and how to start. So first thing first, let's see how you can actually draw this human figure. Let's just do a thing here. Okay, I'm gonna discuss everything on the model and also trying to replicate what I have said on another page. So when I'm come here to the model, you're gonna see like I like to start first with the face, but should I always start with the basic shape of the face or drawing the whole head or whatever? There are some people that actually start with drawing only a circle representing like the head, and that's it. When you actually draw the gesture, just try to start with the very basic shapes. So I'm gonna indicate like the head with only a circle. You can indicate the head with an oval. Okay, you can start with an oval like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, just the indication of the head. So some people also start with the neck as only a simple line. Okay, that simple line represents the neck. Some people doesn't start with a simple line, they also try to do the whole neck, and I don't recommend that. In the early stage you're gonna think of everything like a stick figure, but not that stiff, and I'm gonna tell you how you do that. So just a line to represent that neck. Again, now is that hard? No. Now let's start. Some people just get here and stop. Now what we have to do now is actually the most important thing is the torso. It is like the whole body, but the torso is that thing that we all messed up. We all mess up drawing the torso, and I recommend to start with this line. And what is this line? This line actually represents the angle of the shoulders, and I'm talking about the angle of the shoulder, not the collarbones or the clavicles of the human body. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you how. This line represents the angle of the shoulders, as you can see. Let's put a point here and a point here. The clavicles, which is this one, is ending here and here and has like a line between. The line is actually what I'm talking about. So let's just start with this line. Forget all the details, just forget everything and start with this simple shape. And now let's see. For this method, I'm not following all the way Mr. Michael Hampton. Okay, I'm trying to make it so easy for you to start. Now people just starting, some people start with boxes, some people start with ovals and so on. For me, you have to have the knowledge of perspective, and then you can start with anything you are comfy with. I'm gonna tell you how. For this pose, when you actually draw this line and this angle, that helps you to determine the perspective. And how's that? If you continue this line, do you see this plane facing here? You have to have the knowledge again. You have to have the basic knowledge of basic shapes and how it actually behaves on space. So if I'm gonna continue drawing this box, it's gonna be this shape, the shape of the box. And I'm gonna tell you why. If you are looking closely to the shape, you have to take just a minute and analyze what is going on in that shape. So if you see here, the shape is kinda tilted a little to the back. Look here, it is just tilting a little to the back. So if I'm going to draw an arrow, so it's gonna be tilted like that. That means if it's going to be tilted like that, that means I'm gonna see the lower plane of the box or whatever, the lower plane of this a cylinder or whatever. So this is the lower plane, and I'm not talking about the pelvis or the rib cage or whatever. Forget anything. I'm just talking about basic shapes, just basic shapes. So the basic shapes that Michael Hampton is talking with when drawing the gesture is 8 parts. And what are those parts? The head, the rib cage, the pelvis, okay, head, rib cage, pelvis, and also the legs. Have 2 here, arms, and the spine. You're not seeing actually now because she's like the frontal one, a frontal view, but he's talking about how to draw a gesture with including the whole 8 parts, like the bigger parts of the human figure. And I'm gonna tell you something, you don't have to actually follow that to like all the way to the end. So I'm going to help you now with drawing the gesture with the easy way. And what is the easy way? Is to actually know how perspective work and so on. But if I'm going to follow some thing here, like look, if I'm going to draw like this box right here, do you see this shape? this line, follow this line. It starts from here, and this is the middle of the clavicles, or the middle of this line, or the middle of the rib cage. If I'm gonna represent the rib cage like this, only just an oval, and this is like the 3/4 view. Okay, again the rib cage, it is the center line, the center line of the whole body, the center line of the whole frontal face of the body. Okay, so let's follow that all the way to the crotch. Okay, now for the balance of the body, I'm gonna draw now the balance of the body from the profile view, so bear with me. This is the head and this is the neck. If you're going to see, the rib cage is actually going forward, and here is the spine, but the hips or the pelvis is going backwards. It's actually going like a zigzag. And here's the legs, as you can see. So neck is going like that. This is like a zigzag. This is how the body balances itself. Okay, so as you can see, the rib cage is going this way if you're gonna see it from the profile view, and the pelvis is going this way. So that means if I'm going to look from here on the eye level, or even on this example, it's kinda little from a down view, so you're gonna see the lower plane of the rib cage and also the upper plane of the pelvis. So in this figure, I'm not going to talk about too much details, but you gotta need now to draw the pelvis. And if you want to draw the pelvis, I'm not talking about any landmarks, I'm not talking about any details. Again, we're just going for the gesture, we're telling a story, we're just thinking about the weight, the balance, and the anatomy. Not the anatomy we are talking like muscles and bones and so on. No, we're just talking about the lines and how the lines communicate to make a good gesture, to convey a message to the viewer. So if you're going to start in this particular model, this is the pelvis, and I'm gonna tell you where to start and where to end, but that's not actually the good point to start with. So don't start this way. I'm just drawing these things just to make it clear to you while I am discussing how to draw it, and that is how, with following the perspective. So if I'm going to draw again as I showed you, this is the pelvis and this is the rib cage. We're seeing the lower plane of the rib cage and the upper plane of the pelvis. Okay, but when drawing a gesture, you're just thinking about those lines, C, S, and I, curves, the S curve, and the straight lines. And how we're gonna approach that is drawing like a head. Again, the connection between the head and the rib cage, represent the rib cage as an oval, just an oval without any details. In this stage, you have to have some lines that has a meaning. Your line must have a meaning, so you should not actually draw like a face like this and do a line like that. That has no meaning at all, so it is not necessary. So if you wanna draw something meaningful, you have to have your lines have to have like the intention, and has to be important. So don't draw any unnecessary lines. So if I draw like the rib cage like an oval, I'll have to follow the line, this line. Okay? And again, don't forget the angle of the shoulders. It helps. And to have like a balanced shape, when if the shoulders are actually leaning this way, the angle here, the rib cage will follow the perspective to the other angle. They all gonna meet in a point, which is the vanishing point. Okay, so let's start. Now I'm gonna follow this box, but how? I'll show you how to draw on the figure the gesture. And how's that? By drawing. Again, I'm trying to say it like lots of times for you to understand, but the gesture is the easiest and the most important stage to start with. The head, the neck, the connection, the shoulder line, and the most important line that actually connects the ribcage and with the pelvis. So here you can draw an oval for the ribcage, or you don't. You really don't have to. This is like kinda like not that early stage, but you have to follow here like the flow of the body. So this is like a line here and connected to the crotch, and the line here and connected to the crotch. If you did such a thing from here to here, you're gonna have in the end the connection of the rib cage. So you can start with drawing the rib cage, or you can just start with what I have started with. Okay, now sorry. Now to continue what we are actually trying to do here, there are lots of details like this, the breast, the connection between the shoulder and so on. You don't really have to think about anything except the whole like image. That's it. See? My lines are so loose, but with a meaning. And what is that meaning? Is actually trying to figure out the pose, and that's it. This is the gesture. You can actually, as I said, you can draw like the whole rib cage and also the pelvis, but you really don't have to in this stage. You just need to know like the basic shape, like the gesture, and you can also exaggerate the pose a little bit. And how is that? By tilting it a little like this. It is more appealing to the eye. Okay, this stage you have to really practice like a lot. If you're going to practice this stage like a lot, as I said, it's gonna saves you so much time while learning the whole thing, like the human figure studying. Human figure studying and anatomy studying is actually so hard. If you are an artist that is actually wanna know everything, and you wanna draw like zombies, you wanna draw like in complex muscles and so on, so you have to know everything. But if you are that kind of like me, trying to draw like cool figures, cool shapes, I have like some knowledge, but I don't have the most knowledge. I only have like 50% of knowledge on anatomy and stuff. But if you are a pro, if you wanna go to the like the maximum, or you're gonna try to stop here, you still have to start with the basic shapes, like the start with the gesture, the starting point, all of those ones who started, they start with the structure, they start with this stage. So let's see. Now I'm talking about the C and S and I, and as you can see, if I'm going to draw, the importance of them is like, see, this is the line, this is curves, this an S curve, also an S curve, this is a curve, and so on. That makes your figures like a lot dynamic and lot not lifeless. Okay, so in this stage I'm just, as you can see, just drawing to convey like a message to the viewer, to make him know the pose. Now he's have seen the pose and now he has the feel to the pose. Now the next stage is to include some parts, which are, if I'm going to represent the head as an oval, just try to make it like more of a head than just a circle or an oval. So if you're gonna start drawing, and again you have to have like the basics as I said. So if you're gonna analyze this model, so the head is actually tilting, she's like tilting the head above, she's looking up. So if it's going to follow the perspective again, so it's gonna be like a box, and we are seeing like the lower plane of it. If you're gonna draw it like a box, you don't have to. If you have, actually I'm gonna draw it like I draw a lot with the Andrew Loomis way, and it's gonna be just as rough as it gets. Okay, here I am, and I'm here talking about we have actually exceeded the stage of gesture, and now we are going to make some basic shapes and forms. And how's that? By drawing some boxes, ovals, and some cylinders. And again, here is the neck. And for this one, as I said, you have to know the basics, because we have the box here that follows the perspective and the two vanishing point and the horizon line. Also, you really need to know how to draw a cylinder in perspective. As you can see, this is the lower plane, so don't you ever draw the wrapping lines like this. Consider it as a rubber band wrapping around the cylinder like this. So these wrapping lines will help you a lot while drawing the gesture, and it gives the feel of the 3D. Also, you have to differentiate between, if we're looking to this arm is actually looking towards the camera. So I'm gonna see this plane. But if we're gonna look at this leg, those are the legs, again this leg, but the leg behind so you really need to know how the basic shapes act on perspective. It is so important. So I'm talking about, again, the lines are the C, the S, and the I, and those will help us a lot to draw a believable gesture. Now I'm gonna draw a believable gesture, but it will be kinda advanced. And how it is advanced? Just throwing some little details while drawing, and it's gonna be like, again, the head, nothing fancy, the neck, okay, the angle, the angle, Again, the center line, the frontal plane, which is now the rib cage. It is so loose. In this stage you have to be so loose while drawing, and from the end of it just connect to the crotch, and then the legs, which is again the lines wrapping around it, and this leg. Okay, again the arms are all like cylinders. As you can see here, I'm not focusing about the deltoid and how it is connected with the chest and so on. I'm just trying to make basic shapes. So is it now like believable enough? So for this stage you are done. Okay, this is like the first stage. So it is so important, and from here you have to build up to the end so you have a believable figure. So in this stage, as you can see, I have just drawn the rib cage as an oval, and I haven't still draw the pelvis, and I'm showing you how to draw these things right now, also in perspective and in some views. So I don't know what are you comfy with while drawing the human figure, what are the basic shapes you are looking for, but I'm gonna give you some options. So the pelvis is actually an egg shape. This is like the center line and the ending points of the pelvis. I'm gonna see the bottom view, then it is tilted like back, or I'm going to see it from beneath. Okay, this can be a cylinder. Again, you can represent the rib cage with a cylinder, or you can represent it with a box, but the box is in perspective and it's going to be a 1-point perspective. Okay, this is if I'm looking from down and 1-point perspective. What if I'm going to draw a pelvis from like a side view, not the side view, the 3/4 view? Okay, again it is following the perspective. The cylinder is here, and I'm still looking from down, and a box. And again, if you really don't know how this works in perspective, those shapes works in perspective, I urge you to learn first, so that human figures drawing will be so easy, or at least the starting point will be so easy to understand and to even draw it like in a good way. So this is the pelvis. This is the rib cage, I'm sorry. Now, if you're talking about the pelvis, you can draw it like this, or again a boxy shape, or as a cylinder. Okay, this is like the frontal view, but we're looking from up here. And if I'm going to draw the 3/4 view, it's going to be, the pelvis is going to be like this. The 3/4 view. And I actually, most of the time, I use this shape. Not so much times I use like boxy shapes, but when the things are like going like crazy details and I can see everything, I just go to the boxy shapes to just figure out the perspective, because sometimes there is like, I want to draw like a good or a complex pose, so it is kind of hard to see what is going on, so I just go with the boxes so I can actually figure out the perspective first, and things will get easier after I draw those lines. Now we have merged some shapes to the human figure. Sorry. Okay. In this stage, we have drawn like the gesture, and we have included some basic shapes to the figure. Now we're going to go to the second stage, which is drawing some landmarks. And what are those landmarks? Landmarks are just going to be like points on the skeleton that will help us to know everything, like the positions and the proportions, right, and the connections between like the different parts of the whole shape. Okay, so let's start. I'm gonna clean up this one so we can see, or we'll just go in and draw on this model here. So the first landmark is the clavicles. And it's like the clavicles, shape-wise, the clavicles like resemble the handlebars of a bicycle. Okay, or a simplified bow. These two bones act as like levers, enabling the arms to move around and away from the rib cage. So the orientation of the clavicle will change depending on the position of the arms. Okay? And this like point here, this one between the clavicles, is the bit of the neck, like at the bottom of the throat. And from this point, draw this line, which is the center line of the frontal face. It helps you a lot to position the rib cage and also the pelvis. Okay, so this is like the bit and the clavicles. Now the rib cage. The landmark is not the rib cage, but I'm just drawing the rib cage to represent the landmark. As you can see, since the model is kinda skinny, so the bones are actually, you can see the bones from under the flesh. So the end of, oh, I forgot, there's like this one is called the manubrium. It's kinda like a parallelogram or like a triangle under the pit, and then from the manubrium is like an area of bone that the two clavicles pivot from. Okay? And the sternum, which I'm going to draw right now, is like a bone that fuses the bones of the rib cage together in the front. It is like acting like a tie, necktie. This is the sternum. Okay? And I'm talking about landmarks, and again, you don't have to have that ultimate knowledge about everything and about the names of it and so on. I'm just doing landmarks that would help us to actually draw a believable human figure. You really don't have to know the names, and also you don't have to know what is the manubrium and what is the sternum. You just have to have a knowledge for that line here. Okay, and the end of the thoracic arch of the rib cage, these are also landmarks. Okay, so if we're gonna draw again like the pelvis, as I told you how to draw it, also in perspective, those are the ends of the iliac crest of the pelvis and the bottom of the pubic bone. And again, you have to have some knowledge, maybe the least knowledge, but you still have some knowledge of these shapes. So I'm drawing like a quarter view, 3/4 view, and these going to be like the ends of the iliac crest. Okay, and on this figure, actually you're gonna see it again, since she is kinda skinny, you're gonna see here, this is like the point here and here. So if you're gonna draw like the pelvis right here, see? So these are actually the most important landmarks on this human figure to start with. There are also like another landmarks like the joints between the here, like the shoulders, the joints like for the elbow, and here for the wrist, and here. But you don't actually need to know all of these landmarks. The most important landmarks for me are the ones I have mentioned right now, which is the bed of the neck, this one, which allows you to draw this line that actually connects the rib cage to the pelvis, and also those landmarks at the end of the rib cage and the end of the iliac crest or the pelvis here. If you actually started to practice and started to know the position of those landmarks, nothing will stop you. Believe me, you're gonna draw like beautiful human drawings, you're gonna exaggerate as much as you want, but you're still gonna draw some believable human figures. And believe me, I don't have all the knowledge about names and stuff and so on. I'm just trying to make, just trying to, as much as I can, I'm trying to take an advantage of what I know to just helping me to draw some good shapes. And that's it. So in this stage, we are now again, we started with the gesture, and we incorporate some lines like the C curve, the S curve, and the straight lines. Then we added some basic shapes like boxes, ovals, and cylinders. And also, when we're talking about cylinders, we have wrapped some lines to know like where this cylinder is pointing towards the camera or just recedes out from the camera. Okay, so in this stage you have to learn these things, and from here you will have a believable figure drawing to start with. Okay, now I'm gonna show you some like tips and tricks that will help you also to draw from here. From this point you can actually try to even know much more, but this is the starting point to have to start with. Now you have like a believable human figure, but still there are some things you really need to know, and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about right now. If I have this figure right here, I haven't talked about the connections like between the breast, like the chest, and the deltoid, the connection between how the deltoid connected to the arm, and to draw the chest, and how to draw like these fat parts and the connection between the pelvis. I'm not actually talking about these ones, because these ones you can draw it and learn it by yourself. This is like an advanced like explanation for the human figure, but you're actually gonna need it, so I'm gonna try to simplify it as much as I can. Now I'm gonna draw the human figure like I'm going to draw it like an ending project, but I'm gonna explain every part while drawing so you can follow along with me. So we have established a go point, like the basic shapes, the gesture, and so on. Now you have to like drop the opacity of this, or you can actually, if your lines are not that dark, you can draw above above the sketch. It will give you some good starting point and some good actually aesthetic view. So let's start. Now if I'm going to draw a head, I have some videos talking about how to draw a head from different angles, like the front, the back, and so on, but I'm gonna recap some things here. Okay, so I start with a cylinder, I start with a circle. Okay, now after I start with a circle, the circle represents the cranium of the head, and the cranium is actually the part that holds the brain inside. Okay, now we have two angles, like the brow angles and the ears angle. So here's the brow angle and the ears angle. Okay, now let's see the center line of the face, the outer edge of the face, and the outer edge of the eyebrows. Okay, again, I'm not doing it like a full explanation, because I have actually discussed these things before on other videos, so I'm trying to just recap what I have already said before. Okay, the part of the jaw, and we're going to see again the bottom of the head. See, so it's going to act again as a box in perspective. We're seeing like the lower plane of that box. Okay, now the neck, if I'm going to draw the neck, it's going to be a cylinder. And again, since, as I said, it is tilted like a little to the back, so the cylinder, I'm going to see the lower plane of the cylinder. For this video, as I said, I'm talking about the human figure as a whole, so I'm not going to into too much details about the neck tendons, the neck and the anatomy of the neck or the anatomy of the head, the muscles and so on. Again, this video is how to draw a human figure, like the starting point, the start point you need to draw human figures. Okay, so again, I'll draw the shoulder line, which represents the angle of the line. Okay, and let's just do it on this, the one I've already drawn. Okay, now I'll draw the rib cage, the line, this is the pit, the clavicles. As you can see, it is so loose. Again, sometimes when I'm drawing like the sketches, I actually take so much time drawing a sketch, since I like to draw clean lines, so it takes me like hours. So I represent the shoulder with two balls, two spheres. Okay, since this is like the 3/4 view, and since it is going towards the perspective point, so the other sphere is going to be like behind the rib cage, so I'm not going to draw the whole ball. Okay, now for the rib cage, I'm gonna continue and drawing the rib cage and determine the ending points of it. So in this one, as you can see, to help me draw the breasts, I'm going to wrap some lines to just show you that the rib cage is actually going backwards and tilted a little bit to the back, since I'm actually seeing this lower view. Okay, just connecting the shoulder to this rib cage, and now I'm gonna draw the pelvis from here. As I told you can draw the pelvis as like, again, a cylinder, as a box shape, whatever you feel comfy with. Okay, now these are actually some fats, like some muscles and fats and so on. Here's like the obliques and these shapes. Again, I'm so sorry for not going into too much details about these parts, but you have to learn it by yourself. Okay, so you have to learn, since the body is going like this, so it is stretching from here, so it has to actually pinch right here, and this pinch is going to act like this, and you really need to know what overlapping means, how to overlap, like two spheres are overlapping each other, like one at the front and one in the back. So since like the rib cage is in the front, so this one is going to be in the back, so the rib cage will actually continue, as you can see here. Look, the rib cage will continue, so that means the rib cage is protruding, just going outside, and this fat part is actually behind this rib cage. Okay, and then represent like the legs, the legs from here, since she's actually stretching her legs, her right leg towards the camera, so it's going to be like this. I'm gonna see also the lower plane, but the one behind is going to be like this. Okay, this is how cylinders react in perspective, or act in perspective. And this is actually like the starting point that you can start with, and so on. Also, you can draw this arm here and this arm here. And the connection here is not so important in that early stages. You have to learn by yourself. Okay, but as you can see right here, if I'm going to actually explain it like a little bit, since most of the poses that like they have the dynamic and the action poses, it has her arms kinda lifted up, so you have to know how the chest actually works. So if I have like the clavicles here, so the chest muscles, and then this wrapping around, the deltoid is wrapping around this in the bone. Okay, and again, those are like details you have to learn by yourself. So I hope you have learned like something or two, a thing or two, because actually I know some people trying to go into the human figure, and they find it so hard, and also they find it like overwhelming, but sometimes it gets easier with practicing. And as you can see, maybe this one I have actually drawn right here is not the perfect one, is not the perfect example. Maybe it has lots and lots of mistakes and so on, but I guarantee you you can get away with this. I'm not talking about you have to, not to learn and just learn how to cheat. No, I'm just talking about even if you have the least knowledge of anatomy, you can actually go and start learning some approaches to like draw some beautiful and gorgeous human figures. Okay, so I urge you to start learning, and I recommend to start with Michael Hampton figure drawing. The book of Michael Hampton figure drawing. He's talking about heads, he's talking about human figures, he's talking about everything, but in a very simple way. So he's not just talking about the most complex things to know. He's just, as I showed you, he's going from this gesture to then the basic shapes, then how the basic shapes can interact with the gesture, and then adding some landmarks, and he's talking about balance, weight, and so on. And then he stops there and trying to explain each part by itself, like the deltoid, like the shoulders, the head, like the chest, and how the chest connects to the shoulders and the arm, the rib cage, and the connection between the rib cage and the pelvis, and the fat parts that holds them together, and so on. And also talks about some muscles, bones, and so on. So again, I hope I can actually help you a lot with these in like more videos to come. But from this one, I kindly ask you to start, if you are interested in human figures, to start and practice some gestures. Just enjoy what you are doing, and see you later. Thank you so much.